In this video we're going to look at fertilization, differentiation, and we're also going to have a look at some specialized cells. Okay, I don't want to give you too much information on this, but when a man and a woman fall in love, they might decide to make a baby. I'm not showing you this bit. 9 months later, baby arrives. Now we're going to look at some of the steps as to how we get from one cell to the 50,000 billion that make you up. And it does all start from that one cell, the egg cell, and it's got a few adaptations to help it to do its job, which is to develop into an embryo. The egg cell is quite big. As cells go, it's a bit of a beast. It's massive because it's got a lot of food stored in it for the embryo to develop from, and it's got a nucleus. Now that nucleus, if you were to condense all the DNA down into its chromosomes, you'd find that it's only got 23. This is the haploid number of the cell, which means the half. One egg cell, an unfertilized egg cell on its own, doesn't have the full set of information needed to make a person. As you probably remember, you've got 46 chromosomes in your adult body cells. There are a couple of exceptions to that. Your red blood cells don't have any chromosomes at all, because they don't have a nucleus, they don't need one. Also, if you're a boy, your sperm cells aren't going to have 46 chromosomes, and if you're a lady, your egg cells aren't going to have 46, they're going to have 23. So with those exceptions aside, any of your body cells have 46 chromosomes, but this egg cell has only got half. It's going to need to get the other half, the other 23 chromosomes, from the sperm cell. Now the sperm cell's got a lot of adaptations to do its job. Primarily its job is to move. It's kind of like a delivery system. The whole point is to deliver the nucleus to the egg. So to help with that, it's streamlined to help it move fast. It's got a tail for propulsion. And of course, to make the tail move, you're going to need mitochondria to provide the energy to do that. That's where the respiration will happen to provide energy for the tail to move. Okay, the sperm cell has also got, at the kind of top end of it, it's got an acrosome. Now this contains digestive enzymes which we'll use to burrow through the outer layer of the egg once it reaches there. And finally, of course, it's got a nucleus. That's the whole point of this. The whole idea is to get the nucleus from the sperm cell to the egg. Now that nucleus, like the egg cell, has only got 23 chromosomes. It's haploid. It's got half the DNA needed to make a new person. So you're going to get the half the DNA from the sperm cell plus the half from the egg, and it's going to make the full set of 46, all the chromosomes you need to make a new person. Okay, so here you see the sperm cell and the egg cell. I'd like you to note that they are not drawn to scale because the egg cell is much bigger than the sperm cell, even bigger than this picture would make it look like. Okay, so the sperm cell is swimming towards the egg cell. Swimming along. Bam! Got there. Okay. So once the sperm cell reaches the egg, the enzymes in the acrosome burrow into the egg cell. They kind of break down a small part of its outer level. This allows the cytoplasm of the sperm cell and the egg cell to fuse, to combine. The cell contents, that is. Just after the cells fuse, a very quick, lightning quick chemical reaction happens around the cell, hardening the outside of it. This stops any more sperm from getting to the egg, because if any more sperm got there now, you'd have the 23 chromosomes from the egg, the 23 chromosomes from the sperm, and then another 23 from the extra sperm. You don't need that. You want just 46. The tail of the sperm cell also falls off because it's not needed anymore. And now finally the two nuclei inside the cytoplasm will fuse. So once the two haploid nuclei have fused, diploid nuclei as a set, they now have the full set of 46 chromosomes, all that's needed to make a new person. Okay, so that fertilized egg is now diploid. It's got the full set of chromosomes needed to make a person. But it's got a long way to go yet. It's only the one cell. To get from that one to the 50,000 billion, it's going to have to kind of divide quite a lot. So the fertilized egg cell divides by mitosis to make two identical copies of itself. These two daughter cells will again divide by mitosis to make 4 cells. These 4 daughter cells again divide by mitosis to make 8, and those 8 will divide again to make 16, and they'll keep dividing and dividing until you get a big ball of cells. This is called an embryo. So the daughter cells keep dividing and form a ball of undifferentiated cells. Now what undifferentiated means is these cells, these embryonic cells, have the potential to become any other type of cell in your body. They're called Now, you might be familiar with some of the controversy about this, and we discussed this a little bit in a lesson, where these stem cells have the capacity to become any of the other cells in the body. They can specialize to become anything else. They haven't yet become different. They haven't made this. They haven't kind of gone down one direction or another yet. So they are undifferentiated. Now, embryonic stem cells, which we just looked at, have the potential to become any cells in the body. They're really potent, really powerful. You can also get stem cells from adult bone marrow, but these cells aren't as potent. They can't differentiate as much. They can become some types of cells, but they don't have the capacity of the embryonic stem cells to become any cell in your body. On a side note here, and just kind of moving past the controversy, plant cells, unlike us, have the ability to re-differentiate. They can differentiate again to become something else. Like once in your body, once these stem cells go down the path of becoming a muscle cell or a glandular cell, they can't go back. When they keep dividing, they'll just stick with that route. They can't go backwards. Plant cells are a little different. They can re-differentiate. Okay, speaking of plant cells, we're just going to look at a couple of adaptations of a root hair cell. We've already looked at the sperm cell and the egg cell in animals, so we're just going to even the ante a bit by looking at some plant cells. So this is a diagram, this is a microscope slide, I beg your pardon, of a plant's root. Now, if you can see all the kind of sticky outy bits coming outside, these are what's called root hairs, and they grow from a specialized cell called a root hair cell. Here's a diagram of one. Now, obviously, this is just one of those hairs. They're going to be kind of stacked up one on top of the other. And at this point, it might be worth mentioning the job of the root for a plant is to absorb water and mineral ions from the soil. So the plant root hair cells have to be very specialized to do that. Okay, well, the most obvious specialization or adaptation is the massive sticky outy bit called the root hair. This large root hair increases the surface area available to the cell across which water can diffuse, and this more surface area means that diffusion will happen quickly. It's also got a large permanent vacuole inside it. This will speed up the rate at which water will diffuse into the cell. And also, if you notice, around the root hair part of the cell wall is quite thin. This reduces the diffusion distance, again accelerating the rate of diffusion. Okay, one last cell we're going to look at, I'm going back to animals now for this one, is the cone cell in your eye. It's again, you can see some of the generalized features for most animal cells. It's got the nucleus there, there's some mitochondria, it's got a cytoplasm, cell membrane. There's nothing there that you haven't seen before, except up the top. If you look at the part labelled outer segment, it's got this kind of cone shape, and it's made up of these kind of series of discs, in which is a special chemical which changes colour when light hits it. So, for example, if light goes into your eye of a certain wavelength and hits this cone, it will change the chemical. This change is detected by the cell, and if you look down the bottom, the synaptic terminal part, it kind of branches off, and that's where it kind of sends a message to the optic nerve, which will send it to the brain, letting the brain know that a bit of light has been detected by this part of the eye. Finally, one last thing is, if you notice in the middle bit, all the mitochondria, mitochondria is where the respiration happens, and you're going to need energy to change the chemical back after it has changed colour, and that's where the mitochondria come into it. So any cell that does something is going to have mitochondria.